everybody. Welcome to the Roadie on the Horn podcast. This is episode 32, and today is September 8th at time of recording. This is a special podcast because the NFL is back this week, and we're very excited for it. We're going to have a full NFL preview for you going down each division, and you'll hear Donnie and my MVP and Super Bowl picks. We'll get into some sports later on and our questions from our listeners, as we do on this podcast. So without further ado, I am going to introduce my awesome co-host, as always, joining me again from the state of Colorado. It's Donnie. Donnie, how you doing, man?
I'm good. It snowed today, so that was really strange. I don't know if you saw my picture in the group chat or whatever. I'll tweet it out on the Rothpod account later. But yeah, we had snow today, which is one of the earliest snows in Colorado history, in Denver, which is just not something you want to deal with in September. But here we are. It was 103 degrees over the weekend, and today it hit into the high 20s. So. That's where we're at. I can only do so much here. I don't know.
Yeah, how about that? I remember literally earlier this week, I was walking outside here in Iowa, and it's probably like 80s. Like I was like, man, September, it's like still a summer month. And then what do you know? Now we get snow, and then you hit middle of September and late September, and you're like, wow, September is not a summer month. So September, they be playing games on you with the weather, and they're playing games on Donnie. So that's really tough.
This is why everybody should live in California. Simple as that. You don't have to deal with snow ever. It's 70 degrees when it's cold, and it's 105 degrees when it's hot. And it's like you deal with that.
There you go. There's your weather chat out there to break the ice. But we have football to talk about. That is big news. NFL is back this week. Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. It seems like it's been so long since we've had any kind of football. We've had no preseason. So the last time we watched a meaningful football game was the Super Bowl. It was Chiefs and Niners. So it's been a while. It's been since February. So we're finally back. We're finally getting football, and it's the Chiefs again. They're playing the Houston Texans. So we'll start with that game, Donnie. Any initial thoughts on what we're going to see in the opening game?
Sloppy. I just think it's going to be sloppy football, which you would expect. The preseason, I don't really find the preseason very relevant in football in general, but it is, it gives you time to work on things. Whether or not the preseason games look good, you can figure out your strengths and weaknesses pretty good from a couple of games, especially, later, the ones where the players actually play instead of week one where, last year it was like you'd see the first team come out for maybe a drive and then it'd be like, yeah, we're throwing in the bums out there. But my expectation, as is with every Thursday night football game in general, is sloppy football, and I don't think that's really surprising to anybody at this point. That it's going to be, I would assume at least the first quarter, first half, we're going to see some mistakes that just shouldn't be made in an actual football game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I think the fact that there were no preseason games, I know for me personally, I think that's going to be a bigger deal than I feel like I've heard other people talk about. So I'm glad to hear you bring that you think it'll be a big factor as well. I would say other storylines, obviously, we're going to finally see Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that Kansas City offense. I feel like all offseason we've been hearing everything about how Clyde's going to really go off in Andy Reid's offense. So definitely something to look for. I know Kareem Hunt had like the most yards ever for someone in a debut when he showed up with Andy Reid's offense. So we'll see if they can get some kind of a duplicate performance from Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Houston struggle a little bit out of the gate. Deshaun Watson hasn't thrown a pass without Hopkins on the field in a long time, especially week one. So, we could see them struggle to move the ball a little bit, especially because I think Kansas City's defense will be better than people expect. I don't know. It's an interesting storyline to see Deshaun Watson, see what he's really made of. He still has a decent receiving core, but I mean, obviously, you lose a top 2, top 3 receiver in the game, and you really have to sit there and wonder: is this team going to be able to get it done without a bona fide superstar? Almost, I would say. I'd say if anybody's a superstar in terms of wide receivers in the league, Hopkins has that talent to be very, very easily your number one or a lot of people's number one. So. I think that's an interesting storyline. I'm sure they'll be fine because obviously Deshaun Watson is a great quarterback. But losing your number one target and the number one target that is just so talented it's got to be tough for him.
Yeah, no doubt. They essentially replaced DeAndre Hopkins with David Johnson, who they got back in the trade at running back, and then they went and traded a second for Brandon Cooks. So there's a little bit new offense out there for Houston. They'll have obviously Will Fuller back as well. So a lot of speed, and we'll see if maybe they can get David Johnson's career back on track to back when he was actually pretty good for the Cardinals. But we will definitely see on that. So that'll definitely be interesting. Obviously, so thrilled to have football back, defending champs. So we look forward to that on Thursday. But Donnie and I, our two favorite teams reside in the NFC East. I'm an Eagles fan. Donnie's a Giants fan. A lot of you know that. So we're going to go through each division, and we're going to start in the NFC East and just kind of like share some thoughts, share some feelers, how we're feeling about each division. So I'll let Donnie go first, talk about the New York Giants.
Cautious optimism, I think, is the name of the game here. I know the Giants are not a heavy underdog week one, but they are a slight underdog. I think it's 6 points at this point against Pittsburgh on Monday night, which is interesting. I don't know. I think there's a lot of reason to be positive about this team and hope for some just growth. Obviously, I don't think the Giants are winning the Super Bowl this year. I don't think they're going to come anywhere close. I'd be shocked if they even made the playoffs. But if you get production out of the young guys. Obviously, it's year two of the Daniel Jones experiment, which year one went swimmingly compared to where I thought it would have been. Very, very surprising to see him pan out as well as he did in the first season of his career. And then you have guys like, obviously, Darius Slayton on offense could be just an absolute steal, looking like a very, very talented receiver, paired alongside with guys like Sterling Shepard, who never stays healthy, and Evan Engram, who never stays healthy. Which is if you could get a full season out of both of them, that would just be shocking. But I don't think it's going to happen. But it'd be fantastic. And then throw them with Saquon Barkley. The offense looks like it could be a potentially well-oiled machine if the line can hold up. Which is the first time you can say that about the Giants' offense in how long? It's got to be 5, 6, 7 years at least. And then defensively, also a lot of question marks. We're really not sure how the new additions like Logan Ryan are going to necessarily be able to adapt in, especially considering he was signed very, very recently. Maybe doesn't know everything about how the team's going to run, how rotations are going to work, how substitutions are going to work. So that's an interesting aspect to everything. But the Giants are in a weird spot. They're a very, very young team, and they're relying on more young players than just about anybody in the league to be successful. And if they want to win games, they're going to need huge performances out of some of these young guys, which is a blessing and a curse, I would say, because if your team can't develop youth, you're really you're probably not gonna go anywhere with a team like that. And I think it's a fair assessment to say the Giants will probably end up as a 7 or 8 win team, maybe. I don't expect them to be doing anything more than that. I think you would probably agree on that.
Yeah, I actually do agree with your analysis there. And I think maybe to some outsiders, 7 or 8 wins may be a little bit high for the Giants, but I actually am in agreement with Donnie. He brought up a lot of good points about how they have a lot of weapons on offense. He mentioned Slayton and Sterling Shepard, Evan Engram, Saquon Barkley, of course. So a lot of weapons for Daniel Jones to deal with. And he mentioned the improved offensive line. Obviously, drafting Andrew Thomas in the top 5 is a big add at left tackle. So I do definitely expect some improvement for the Giants. Definitely at least on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, you have a first-year head coach, and then Joe Judge bringing in Jason Garrett to be the offensive coordinator. So I think Saquon Barkley is going to get fed the football, at least that's how it was for Garrett when he was in Dallas with Zeke. So I think a big year from Saquon Barkley's coming up. And then I know Donnie touched on the defense as well. I think this is where I have a little bit more question marks, but he did bring up the fact that the secondary is still pretty young outside of guys like Logan Ryan who were just signed. So I definitely see potential for the Giants there. I think a 7-win total is pretty much about on par where I have it for the Giants. So I like that. I'll kind of shift over now to some of the other teams in the NFC East. Obviously, I am a big Philadelphia Eagles fan, so I'll touch on them here. I actually expect a little bit of regression from the Eagles this year from last year. We're talking about a team that won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, followed that up with a playoff appearance with 1 win in the double doink game against the Bears, so probably got a little fortunate there before losing to the Saints in the second round, divisional round. And then last year, they lose at home, wild card weekend. Carson Wentz goes down to the Seattle Seahawks. So that trend, it shows the Eagles are regressing a little bit from year to year. And I think the offseason did not do them a ton of favors. They lost right guard Brandon Brooks to an injury for the season. Same with left tackle Andre Dillard. So now they have Jason Peters back at left tackle, but you have a little bit less certainty on the offensive line to protect Carson Wentz. A lot of uncertainty with the receiver room as well. 3 rookies made the roster for the Eagles out wide at receiver, and you still have issues with will Alshon Jeffrey be healthy? There's so many questions that even if he does play for a little bit, it probably won't be for too long. And then you're going back to kind of how the offense was last year, where you're relying heavily on your 2 tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, and some of your running backs like Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. So I expect a little bit of regression, but I will definitely still give Doug Peterson his credit that he deserves. He's taken a team that struggled pretty much early in seasons, but would finish very strong late. So I definitely give the Eagles their credit there. But I actually do not predict the Eagles to make the playoffs this year. So that may be a little bit interesting. But yeah, Donnie, I'll shift it to you. Any thoughts on the Eagles now?
Do you worry at all about Carson Wentz's health, and if he does happen to go down, if they will be able to even function offensively without, Nick Foles there, obviously, long gone at this point? Um, do you have any question marks about their potential backups? Obviously, I know you're a massive Jalen Hurts fan, but does it worry you at all that if he goes down, the season is basically done?
Yeah, that is a good question that you bring up there. I will also note they do have Nate Sudfeld as well, who has been with the Eagles now for a couple of years. He played in a Week 17 game in Washington, just kind of on a quick drive, but he wasn't the starter in the playoff game last year. That's still something that kind of annoyed, or not the starter, but the quarterback who came in after Wentz went down. That was Josh McCown, who signed back to the practice squad and is reporting remotely in Texas. Very strange situation. But bottom line is, I think Nate Sudfeld is the backup quarterback. Jalen Hurts is going to need some time to develop, get used to the Eagles system. So I think Sudfeld will be the next man up. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concerning situation. I mean, you can't be ignorant to the fact that Carson Wentz has had injury issues and it's knocked him out in late in seasons that could have totally derailed playoff runs. They won a Super Bowl in one year when that happened. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I think it's definitely a concern. And just combining that with the fact that they've already lost a couple guys up front on the offensive line, I think that is kind of tough for Wentz. But at the same time, the Eagles' skill players need to play better. They were not very good last year. They were throwing to Greg Ward for game-winning touchdowns late in the season, who was a converted quarterback, and now he's probably the fifth or sixth guy on the wide receiver depth chart. So I think that the skill players around Wentz need to help him out just as much as Carson Wentz helping himself from being protected from injury.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked necessarily if the Eagles ended up making the playoffs, especially if Carson Wentz ended up putting up a completely healthy season. Obviously, that's a bigger question mark than people will really recognize. I think a lot of people don't want to talk about injury concerns and such, but I think it's valuable to bring it up about Carson Wentz because considering we haven't seen him really just be able to pull out an entire year without any issues. Obviously, there's a lot of quarterbacks that get hurt. It's a very very high volume positions in terms of getting hit, being roughed up, having to use your legs, having to move around. Um, but yeah, I think it's interesting. It just turns out that the division that they are in is not very good, so it's either them or the Cowboys to make the playoffs. So it's like let's say they rattle off 2 wins against the Cowboys, and their chances of making the playoffs look pretty good out of a season that you specifically are not super super excited about in terms of like a Super Bowl potential season.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And even just going back to last year, the Eagles and Cowboys, they split. The Eagles won the Week 16 game in Philly. That pretty much clinched them the division. So Eagles and Cowboys, they go back and forth. Really, they have over the last decade or so, just beating up on each other back and forth. So I think Dallas, I'd probably give them the slight edge going into the season. I really liked some of the moves they made this offseason, specifically the pick to get CeeDee Lamb. I think that receiving core is probably the best in the NFL. When you count a trio, I think the best duo is probably in Tampa. But when you consider Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb, combined with Ezekiel Elliott back there as well, I think the Cowboys have a little bit more juice offensively, and I think they'll be a little bit more improved defensively as well. Obviously, new head coach there as well with Mike McCarthy. So Dallas is probably my pick to win the NFC East. I could see maybe the Giants and the Eagles competing for some of those wild card spots, but yeah, we'll see. I don't think it's a great division, as you mentioned. I don't think Washington will be very good. First year with Ron Rivera as their head coach, but yeah, I would say I probably lean Dallas in the NFC East right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the NFC East is probably one of the worst divisions in football. Again, not really a shocker. We're used to 8 or 9 win teams competing until the very end, which is not something that you see in other divisions. Especially this year with divisions like the NFC South, which is just so. I don't know. The NFC South is the most interesting division in football to me, especially with Tampa Bay and all of that. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks about the NFC East, and I think it's primarily either about youth or about if teams like the Giants or Eagles can keep all their guys healthy and stay healthy the entire season. We could see a completely different year. But yeah, I think you can go back to this at the end of the season, but I think the NFC East is probably the division in the NFC that has the least wins of any of the four. And I think that's a fair assessment at this point.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I know every time I think about the NFC East, they always bring up the stat that no team has repeated as division champ since 2004. That was the Eagles going 03-04, the last time a repeat champion happened in the NFC East, and the Eagles won it last year. So I'm going with Dallas. I know what goes on in this division. It is just mayhem. So I'm picking a new winner. But yeah, definitely agree with that. Donnie just brought up the NFC South, so we can shift over there. You just mentioned the Buccaneers there, Donnie. So we can continue with that.
I think it's so strange that we're going to see Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski on the same team on an NFC team in Tampa. I just think, people have been talking about this all offseason, but it's really hit me that the Buccaneers are going to be playing football and they're going to have Tom Brady throwing the ball around to Gronk and Mike Evans and God. It's just so strange. And, obviously they just picked up Leonard Fournette too. So it's like, could we see Tampa like potentially actually making a deep run in the playoffs or like, a 10, 11 win team? I know I have skepticism, tough division. Obviously you have to play teams like New Orleans and Atlanta, and then Carolina has Teddy Bridgewater now, so that's an interesting fit. But what are your thoughts on the Buccaneers in terms of like a long-term, like full season? If you had to put a win total on them, what would you say?
Man, that is an interesting thought. I would probably say they're probably a double digit win team. I think Tampa is going to be pretty strong this year, at least on offense. I think that offense shapes out to be really good. I would say probably 11-5 for Tampa. I think they're going to get in the playoffs. I know you mentioned some of the skill guys they have around Brady, but with Fournette in the backfield, they also have Ronald Jones, who's a player I was a big fan of coming out of the draft a few years ago. I think he could have a breakout year this year. And even the tight end room in general. You still have Cameron Brate and OJ Howard to go along with Gronk. And obviously, Bruce Arians, the head coach, I think he is a very, very good schematic coach. So I think he'll get the most out of that offense. And they drafted Tristan Wirfs in the first round. I thought that was a good value pick at 13 overall. So that helps protect Tom Brady a little bit. But I think really the big question is with the Bucs, it comes down to defense. I like Devin White in the middle of that defense, top 5 pick from a few years ago. But the secondary still has a lot of question marks, and you wonder if they can get enough pass rush. But at least when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, it's hard to bet against Tom Brady. I think they'll figure it out, and I expect to see the Bucs in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Tom Brady being in the playoffs is good for football. As much as people dislike him, I know he is he's an enigma. You either love him or you hate him, or you're just plain indifferent like me. I think I'm very indifferent at this point about Tom Brady. When he was on the Patriots, it was a little bit different. Nobody wanted to see the Patriots win, but now in Tampa, it's like it almost makes Tom Brady and a Tom Brady led team feel like they're a potentially likable organization for once, and that's just shocking to me. I never thought I would say that in my entire life, honestly.
Yeah, it'll be weird seeing Brady somewhere else, but I know he maybe didn't look too great for the Pats last year. Obviously, fair to criticize him, but it's still Tom Brady we're talking about. It's hard to doubt him. You can look at his age, but I don't know. I thought Peyton Manning was done when he went and left to Denver, and then he had a season where he threw 50 touchdowns when he was surrounded by a bunch of great weapons there in Denver. So not that this is the exact same situation, but it's just hard for me to count out Brady overall. So that's where things stand with the Bucs. I'll just touch on the New Orleans Saints. I think that is the other team in this division that poses the next biggest threat to represent the NFC, at least when it comes to this division. So I think the Saints are going to be good again. Things that concern me about the Saints, though, I would say if they can continue to protect Drew Brees, that would help. But if they have to work in Taysom Hill, or if they're still trying to develop him, that's kind of an interesting situation. They signed Jameis Winston as well as a good backup. So I know Drew Brees had to step out a little bit last year when Bridgewater had to step in. So that is something to follow with the Saints. After a year where they got bounced a little bit earlier in the playoffs than they wanted, obviously they had a home loss to the Vikings on Wild Card Weekend. So that was interesting. But I do think the Saints, again, will get back to the playoffs this upcoming year.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talk down on Drew Brees and say, he's a little bit over the hill, and I'm not entirely sure that you can say like, oh, he's washed now. Like, I'm pretty sure he had like a 73 or 74% pass completion percentage last year and threw like 3 or 4 picks in the entire year. Obviously, he had a shortened season, but like, I if you're gonna count out anybody in the league, if you're gonna count out a quarterback, I don't think Drew Brees is the quarterback to count out. I just don't think that's a great idea at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we're again talking about the guy with the most touchdowns in the history of the NFL. So hard to count a guy out with that stat, I would say.
Yeah, especially because he's got weapons. As per usual, it's like Michael Thomas is going to go out there and have another fantastic year. I think that's a fair assessment to say. He's going to go out there catch 130, 140 passes again if he stays healthy. I'm pretty sure he had like 16 or 1700 yards last year. And Drew Brees still slings the ball around better than just about anybody in the league. So obviously there is some concern about keeping him healthy and keeping him protected. When Drew Brees can sit there in the pocket, he does magical things. I'm a big fan of what the Saints have done, and if they can continue to stay healthy, obviously Alvin in the backfield, you can't really get much better than that. So I think the Saints are an interesting team. I think that they are one of the favorites out in the NFC. I think the NFC is especially, I don't know, it's especially parity. There's a lot of parity this year in the NFC, which I guess is every year now because we've seen so many different teams make deep runs last year, San Francisco. But yeah, I think New Orleans could be a team that could make some noise and really, really shock people. Put up 11, 12 wins, fairly easily, honestly.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. And then last thing I'll say about the Saints here, they added Emmanuel Sanders this offseason. I thought that was kind of an under-the-radar move. I think he's going to be a good compliment for Michael Thomas and has some good football left in him. So I like that ad for New Orleans. So, yeah, that's where things stand. In the NFC South, always an interesting division. You have Carolina and Atlanta there kind of hanging around, but maybe one of them pops off. We shall see. So that's where things stand in the South. We'll move on to the NFC North now, which holds the team that I am actually picking to win the Super Bowl. That would be the Green Bay Packers. I think the fact that they traded up to get Jordan Love is going to light a fire under Aaron Rodgers, and he's really going to let the league kind of have it this year. I think Rodgers is going to have a really good year. Another year with the same head coach, Matt LaFleur, in that offense. Another year with Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones to his side. Good offensive line, again, in Green Bay. So, and a really young defense. I think they've done a really nice job developing and scouting over the last couple of years on the defensive side of the ball. I think Mike Pettine's a solid defensive coordinator. So, I really like what I'm seeing with the Packers. I'm picking them to win the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that after we go through each division here. But, yeah, Donnie, we can kind of look towards the NFC North now.
Yeah, a little quick thing on Green Bay. If you're gonna doubt another quarterback, I would not be doubting Aaron Rodgers. We've seen him time and time again. That is a guy who takes over games very easily, doing whatever he wants. He will literally pick apart every defense, little by little, make these ridiculous throws, constantly. It's like it's very easy to him, and now he has motivation. He's probably not super thrilled. He said, I don't really care. But let's be real here. It's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers cares a lot. And that division is not exceedingly strong, I would say. The Lions are mediocre. I think that's a fair assessment at this point. The Lions are going to be a mediocre team. We haven't seen the Lions be good in quite a few years.
I think this is the last year for Matt Patricia, in Detroit, if I had to predict.
And I don't even think it's necessarily his fault. I just think it's I don't. There's just not a lot there to be excited about. Obviously, they've got the good running backs. Adding certain guys like obviously, I think you're a fan of DeAndre Swift. I think it's a good addition.
Yeah, he and Kerryon Johnson is a solid backfield, but yeah, kind of to your point here, I think they're still missing a lot out there.
I have a tough time really believing in the Lions. Also have a tough time believing in their counterpart in Chicago. Not a huge fan of the Bears. You need a quarterback to figure it out. And I know they named Mitch Trubisky their quarterback, and we have some Bears fan listeners. I know BK watches all their clips. He's not going to be thrilled. But Mitch Trubisky is not a very good quarterback, and the fact that he beat out Nick Foles is kind of, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily surprising, but you would think that Nick Foles, after what he's done, you would think that Nick Foles would be able to beat up Mitch Trubisky, who is, I don't know how you feel about Mitch Trubisky, but I personally do not. I'm not a big fan. Not a very talented quarterback in my eyes.
Yeah, I think it's fair to criticize Mitch because he did, you can't deny the struggles that he's had, especially last year. I think maybe we even saw a little bit of regression from his first year, which is definitely not what you want. But I think Mitch actually did, towards the end of the year, show some signs of him being at least a fine quarterback, at least a guy you can trot out there and be decent. I think the Bears really did not do a good enough job helping him. The surrounding cast around him was not good last year. Not that I think it's significantly better this year, but I think they need to do a better job of when Mitch is out there, they need to utilize his legs more. I think asking him to drop back and make 25 to 30 reads is not a winning formula. They need to utilize his legs, either whether it's running out of the pocket and making throws or even running on read option plays. Really, I think he is an effective enough runner to make that happen. So I think that does fall some responsibility on Matt Nagy to make sure that happens. But I think we're going to see both Trubisky and Foles play this year. Foles obviously probably like the greatest backup quarterback ever. So the fact that he's starting on the bench, that doesn't concern me too much for the Bears. As I said, I think they're both going to get starts, but I really think it just comes down to the supporting cast. I mean, the Bears, they're always led by their defense if they're going to have success, so they're going to need to carry. I thought there was a little bit of strange moves for the Bears on the defensive side of the ball, letting go of Leonard Floyd and signing Robert Quinn. I didn't really understand that move. I feel like I would have rather them re-sign Floyd and continue to develop him as a player they drafted in the first round. But it'll be interesting for the Bears. I mean, we're talking about a team that has made the playoffs recently, so not a team that I would necessarily brush by and say no way they make the playoffs. But yeah, I think they're not a team right now that I would pick to make it, especially because you have teams like Minnesota and Green Bay in your division that I think are still definitely better than Chicago.
Speaking of Minnesota, how do you feel about what Minnesota is going to be doing this year without Stephon Diggs? It's a little bit interesting to me that they have. It seems like they've just almost replaced him straight up with Justin Jefferson in terms of a talented, talented receiver. I don't know how that's necessarily how well that's going to go right off the bat, but I've seen a couple people think that Minnesota is going to regress fairly hard down to a team that could potentially be a sub 500 team, which would just be shocking to me. I don't think it's gonna be that bad, but obviously losing a guy like Stephon Diggs is not gonna help you in the long run, probably. Especially when especially if you don't have a guy like Justin Jefferson potentially pan out right away, you're gonna need a lot out of a rookie, and that might be a little bit too much to ask in terms of shoes to fill.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Jefferson is still a player I liked a lot. I really think he's a good route runner, and he's very fast as well. He ran like a sub 4.40. So I think that there's potential there for him to replace Stephon Diggs, but I do think there is a drop off. Jefferson was pretty much, he played a little bit 2 years ago, but pretty much just broke out last year, and most of his production came out of the slot. So you wonder if maybe he and Thielen split some of those slot reps or how that goes. Thielen has the ability to play outside too. He's an insane route runner on his own. But still with the Vikings, I have concerns on the O-line. I think it's a below average group, but they still have some skilled players. Obviously, I just mentioned Thielen, obviously Delvin Cook, and I like Alexander Madison as well going into his second year. I think he's kind of an under the radar back. So Vikings usually have a pretty good defense as well. I still expect them to be a team that'll be right in the thick of things for a wild card or even competing with the division for Green Bay, but not a team that I would pick to necessarily get to the Super Bowl with the Vikings.
In terms of quarterback, do you really think that Kirk Cousins is somebody that can bring you to consecutive 10-win seasons? I know this is the first time in his career last year that he was able to put up 10 wins. Do you think that the Vikings are a team that can go back to a 10-win season, especially because Kirk Cousins is a very erratic, inconsistent quarterback, I would say. I wouldn't want to rely around him to take my team to the promised land, but you're a little bit more in depth on your scouting, and I'm sure you have a specific opinion on Kirk Cousins that I might not have as specific as you. What are your thoughts on Kirk this upcoming season?
Yeah, actually, I agree with a lot of what you said there about Cousins. I think he is definitely an erratic quarterback from year to year. He's either, wow, Kirk Cousins is kind of playing like a Pro Bowl level, and then the next year it's like, man, Kirk Cousins sucks. Like, why is he even out here? He can't even make any throws. So, very inconsistent quarterback. I feel like every time with Kirk Cousins, people always bring up the fact that his record against teams with a above 500 record is terrible, and then his record against teams with a below 500 record is incredible. So he beats up on bad teams and can't beat the great teams. So that's obviously not what you really want with a quarterback, but it's like fine, but it's also like the middling state that we've talked about so much with other franchises. That's Kirk Cousins is the middling state of quarterback, I guess. So I think if it were me, I know if we're going back a while now, I was thinking that the Vikings should have started to look for a quarterback to draft early on. I thought that Jordan Love would have been a great spot in Minnesota, actually, because this would be the last year of Kirk Cousins coming up, and then they could groom Jordan Love for 1 year and then have him take over. I don't love Cousins. I think he, like you said, he's very erratic. So I could see him having a bad year because last year was good, but it's hard for me to get a great feel on him going into this year.
Yeah, I think that's how everybody feels. It's like nobody really knows what you're getting out of Kirk Cousins. I think that's the beauty of being a Minnesota sports fan. You really don't know what you're getting out of your teams year after year. It's just we've talked about this before. Obviously with the Wild, the Twins are not the most consistent team in the world. So I think the Vikings are a lot of the same. But at this point, I think we've broken down the NFC enough, and we can go to the AFC. Starting with the AFC East, and a team that is finally has some storylines outside of, oh, is Tom Brady gonna decline in the New England Patriots? Do you think Cam Newton's gonna step in and wow us all? Because I really do. I'm really, really excited to see Cam Newton step in with the Patriots and just blow everybody's expectation out of the water here.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Patriots that they do better than anyone is adapt to their player strengths. So I think the fact that Josh McDaniels and the offensive side of the ball now has Cam Newton and has a running threat at quarterback that allows them to open things up a little bit. I know their offense with Brady was a lot of I formation, using fullbacks, 3-step drops, quick passing game. So I think they have a little bit more creativity options now with Cam. So I really like the running backs as well. Patriots always have a really good O-line. You have N'Keal Harry going into year 2, former first-round pick. So I definitely see the firepower potential there with New England. I don't know if necessarily I think they are better than Buffalo. I think Buffalo is probably the team that I lean towards winning that division. I think Sean McDermott has done an unbelievable job, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Really good secondary for the Bills. So I probably lean Bills in the AFC East, but I definitely think Cam Newton's going to have a strong year, and I could see both teams getting into the playoffs.
Switching to another team, is Adam Gase getting fired this year? What are we thinking?
Yes, 100%. This is last year, Adam Gase.
I tend to agree. It makes me like, I don't know. You never want to wish ill will on somebody, but if
never talk about another man's job, but Adam Gase, your job's it's hot.
If you're gonna be negative about one coach, one person in the NFL, even I think Adam Gase is a very, very good option to be like, maybe he shouldn't be at this position. He's kind of a lunatic. Adam Gase, if you listen to the podcast by chance, I'm sorry. I don't mean to bother you. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but it's like when you look up the first picture of Adam Gase, it's just the picture of him going like it just looks shocked and appalled.
Yep.
Which is, always a good one. But yeah, I think the AFC East is so fun just for there's gonna be so much fuckery. And I'm a big fan of fuckery. We've talked about fuckery many times on the podcast before. It's like, even in Miami's starting Ryan Fitzpatrick week 1. I'm not surprised, but I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm a little bit let down, honestly.
I know. I want to see Tua play too. Once the Tua Dolphins come out, they'll be a fun team to watch, but it may take a couple weeks.
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's good for 1 5-touchdown game a season, and then 1 0 TD 4 interception game the next week. And again, fuckery. We love it here. I can't be mad. The AFC East, I think it's pretty fair to pick Buffalo being the best team in the division by a considerable amount here, honestly.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Just to wrap up the division here, another last point on Adam Gase, just the fact that the Jets changed GMs. Obviously, they have Joe Douglas now. I feel like that it makes it so hard for a head coach to keep his job. When the position above you was changed very recently, there's not a lot of loyalty that's already pre-existing, so that kind of fuels my reason as well. And I don't think the Jets are going to be very good. They just traded away Jamal Adams for 2 picks. I think they're low-key tanking. Sam Darnold doesn't have a ton of weapons out wide at receivers, so it could be a tough year for the Jets. But that's where things stand there in the AFC East. We can move on to the AFC North, which contains one of the best teams in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens, coming back this year after surprisingly losing their first divisional playoff game at home to the Titans. But we get another year of Lamar Jackson and that fun Baltimore offense. So, Donnie, any overall thoughts here as we go to the AFC North?
I'm just going to break it down quick. Baltimore's better than everybody else. I'm skeptical about Pittsburgh because I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is going to be able to do it anymore. Unfortunately, because, you'd like to see... I think football is better when Pittsburgh is good or at least competitive. Obviously, their fan base is ridiculously passionate. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Last night we had some news on the Cleveland Browns wide receiver that you'll have to look on Twitter to find.
Oh my gosh, we got to address it. Odell Beckham. You gotta say what happened, Donnie. You gotta let the listeners know.
Yeah,
what happened with Odell Beckham.
There was a podcast, a No Jumper podcast, where one of the females that I do not know her name, nor do I really care to know her name, says that Odell Beckham likes to be shat on. Not necessarily something that I can really say that I'd ever consider having done to me.
I can't relate to Odell on that one.
I cannot, I'd love to relate to Odell in other ways in terms of have a nice conversation with him. He seems like a very, very interesting character, but that is just something that I can't, you can't really support at this point. It's like, that's just strange. And then
he plays for the Browns. Maybe he got ideas after he got traded to the Browns.
And I mean, you have to think: did he get this idea from somebody else on the Browns? Is Baker Mayfield into it?
I don't know. His teammate Jarvis Landry, the college teammates. Maybe it was Jarvis.
Him and Jarvis, they were getting crazy in the dorm rooms, bro. I'm telling you. But yeah, I don't know. I think we have Cincinnati. You could talk about Joe Burrow all you want to. I think we've done this enough on the podcast where I think we can say that Cincinnati is not going to be very good. Um,
Yeah. I've fallen
Unfortunate.
into the trap before with the Bengals of liking their skill guys and then thinking they'll be good, and then they were absolutely garbage. So I'm not going to make that mistake again, even though I like Tyler Boyd and I think Joe Mixon's all right. But no, the O-line is always trash in Cincinnati. Don't let yourself change that opinion. So I don't think the defense is very good either.
Yeah, it's like AJ Green will play 3 weeks and then he'll be out for the season with another
Yeah,
another
we've
injury.
seen this before. But hey, man, you got a quarterback now, so it's not Andy Dalton taking snaps for the Bengals.
Yeah, even if you're mad about the season, if you win 3 or 4 games, you have your quarterback of the future. You're doing okay. Life is good. Life is fine if you're a Bengals fan. For the first time in a long time, because you don't have to see Andy Dalton take snaps. You know, not to say Andy Dalton's a bad quarterback. He's just more suited to be a backup quarterback, I think. And that's life. That's how it goes. But yeah, I think you'll agree with me. The AFC North is a one-team show here. Pittsburgh could be good. You really never know. And, Cleveland, we've been waiting on them to be good for a couple years now. Baker Mayfield talks a big game. But I think Baltimore runs away with it without much competition at the top, honestly.
Yep, in agreement there with the North. We can move on to another AFC division with the AFC South. So this probably contains, in my opinion, the worst team in the NFL this year, and that would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think the Jags would be I think they're going to go 2-14 if I'm going to put a number on it. I think the Jags are just garbage. They're literally starting Gardner Minshew, and they have no O-line, and they just lost Leonard Fournette, and they're just not a good team. So there you go. That's what I have to say on the Jags.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate. It seems like it's been forever since the Jaguars were really just I miss Blake Bortles Jaguars. At least we were having something there. It's like
I
Gardner
know
Minshew.
they were in the AFC Championship 2 years ago, and now they're back to being just garbage.
Just shocking. But not surprising. It's the Jaguars.
No.
It seems like if there's a team that you don't know what's going on with them, the Jaguars are that team that you just hey,
They'll be relevant once they finally move to London. That's my thought.
Yeah. I mean, give them some time. Give them 7 years, and maybe we'll see. The London Jaguars, the London Crumpets will be fantastic, and we'll go from there. I don't know. I think there are some interesting teams in this division, though. Obviously, we touched on Houston a little bit earlier with Deshaun Watson not having his his favorite target anymore. I don't know if we have talked about the Texans in terms of a long-term, a full season projection here. But I can't see them being that good. I don't, for whatever reason, I just feel like they've relied too much on trying to. I don't know. They rely on injury heavy players, and that's never really a good thought process, especially at skill positions. And it's like, are we really sure that we're gonna have a great running game out of David Johnson? Are we sure it's gonna be there? I don't think anybody's really set in stone on Houston being any more than a very middling 7-8, maybe 9-win team.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty typical year for the AFC South where you have Indianapolis, Tennessee, and Houston all winning between 7 and 10 games. And then whoever wins the week 16 and 17 games is going to be the team that wins the division. It's a very middling division. They have a lot of average teams. I don't think any team from this division is getting to the Super Bowl. So,
but Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, true. I mean, Phillip Rivers, that's interesting. Indy has a quarterback. And then, I think they'll be all right, but it's still, like I said, I think it's the same deal. They'll probably win between 7 and 10 games. I will say Tennessee, I know you made the AFC title game last year, but I don't know. I'm not buying it. I think the Ryan Tannehill contract was a mistake, and he paid big money to Derrick Henry. So, yeah, I'm not crazy about that. I know you just signed Jadeveon Clowney as well, Tennessee, but I don't think anybody from this division is getting to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think at this point we can move on to the West, and we have to talk about both the AFC and NFC West. I think we should stick with the AFC here. We had one of the biggest blows to an AFC West team happened today, actually, with Von Miller. I believe he's out for the season. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but a tweet from Adam Schefter says that he is likely out for the year, and I think that is a massive blow to a Denver team that some people were picking to be a little bit of a dark horse.
Yeah, Denver is really a team that intrigues me. Obviously, now you're talking about year 2 of Drew Lock, and you had some fun playmakers on offense. Their first 2 picks were receivers. They took Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler to go along with Cortland Sutton. You signed Melvin Gordon to go along with Phillip Lindsay. You have year 2 of Noah Fant, your former first-round pick. So a lot of firepower on offense, but yeah, that is definitely a hit to the defensive side. When you mentioned Von Miller, he would have been a fun duo on the edge with Bradley Chubb. So interesting situation there for the Broncos. I still see potential for them to pop off. As I mentioned, with the weapons that they have for Drew Lock, but it is a very good division. I still think you're talking about Kansas City at the top, masterclass in the AFC West.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by KC having another 12, 13, 14 win season. Um, you know, it's just Patrick Mahomes on a different level. He will be, if he can continue this pace, he'll be the best quarterback of all time, or at least 1 and 2 with Tom Brady, depending on how you feel. And then you have question marks like the Chargers, where they do not have the best quarterback of all time, nor do they have a quarterback that anybody is really sure if he can play quarterback on like if he can play 16 strong games and lead the team to the playoffs. I think that's a real question mark, especially considering they've also had injury issues of their own.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, talking about Tyrod Taylor there, looking like the week one starter. I do think we're going to get some Justin Herbert relatively soon. I think they're definitely eager to hand the reins over to him. We've seen this story with Tyrod Taylor before when he was in Cleveland and Baker Mayfield took over week 3. So, yeah, wouldn't shock me at all to see a quick turnover to Herbert this year.
Yeah, and then you go on to the Raiders, who knows nobody has any idea what the Raiders are doing. Obviously, it's like you'd like to think that they know what they're doing. You'd like to think that they have a good team going there, but it's like if any team was going to split quarterbacks this year, I would assume that the Raiders would be up there in terms of veterans at least. Marcus Mariota. If he wasn't on IR, I would say, it would have been an interesting situation. But it's like I think the Derek Carr experiment is something that you have to really sit there and think about long and hard if you're the coach of the Raiders, if you're front office in the Raiders. Because it's not working. Maybe not his fault. I think I don't remember if you're high on Derek Carr or not, but I think the Derek Carr experiment has not gone well so far.
Yeah, I would say I was very high on Derek Carr the year he should have won MVP in 2015, but yeah, he hasn't even gotten close to that form since. Very disappointing the last couple of years. So I think we're going to see a lot of Josh Jacobs for the Raiders this year. I think he's going to get fed a lot of balls, and I like Darren Waller as well at tight end. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still feel like the Raiders roster is just a little bit lacking for my liking. For them to be a team that is a serious threat in the AFC. I mean, I think they'll be competing for a wild card all year, but maybe they get in. But not a team I expect to really cause some damage in the AFC.
Yeah, I think that's fair for the AFC West, and then we can shift over to the final division that we didn't talk about before, which I personally think is the most interesting division in football.
Oh yeah, big
I
agree.
don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen here. Obviously you can start at the top with the 49ers, who showed to be much better than I thought they would be last year. They blew me out of the water in terms of what I thought, because I just didn't expect a team like that to be so sound all the time. Obviously, until the Super Bowl, where things kind of fell apart a little bit there, but that was a team that, I mean, especially you talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, who had an above average year and has much room to grow still. Um, the Niners are such an interesting squad just in general, with all the talent that they've amassed over a couple of years. And you can remember when the Niners were not very good, just very recently. So the Niners have went from zero to hero in a couple of years, and I mean, I don't think anybody would be shocked if they won the division here.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked what I saw from the Niners last year. Really impressed with their defensive line. I thought that was probably the area of the team that really put them kind of over the edge to make the Super Bowl last year. They traded away DeForest Buckner to the Colts, but they used their first rounder on Javon Kinlaw. So just continuing to replenish that defensive line. Now you mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo on the offense. I like the offensive line, and obviously when you're talking about the Niners, Kyle Shanahan's offense, he loves to use his running back. So he's got Raheem Mostert, Jerick McKinnon out there as well. So Tevin Coleman, not to mention George Kittle, one of the top tight ends in the league. Deebo Samuel has been a pretty solid receiver for him. They spent a first-round pick on Brandon Ayuk as well. So really just loaded up yet again for the Niners. So definitely a team I expect to make some noise in the NFC. Could definitely see them getting back to the Super Bowl, if not winning it. I definitely think they're a legit threat. But as you mentioned, this is a really, really good division. We're also talking about the Seattle Seahawks, obviously, LA Rams, teams that have been in the Super Bowl recently, and the team that I expect to make the biggest jump from last year, that being the Arizona Cardinals. I have mentioned before that I am a huge fan of Kyler Murray going into year 2. I see a trend across the NFL of quarterbacks taking a big jump in year 2 when they have the same head coach as the year before, so obviously being the same offense. So I think Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are really, really going to have a strong connection this season. Obviously, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins adding that as well. So Arizona is definitely a dark horse team for me. It is a really tough division, so definitely not a guarantee, but Arizona is a team that I do think will get into the playoffs.
Watching those NFC West matchups, especially near the end of the year when they're going to obviously be playing for, I think you could have three, maybe four teams in the division race by week 14, week 15, which is not something that you can say about just about any other division except maybe the NFC East, but for many different reasons. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really just, if I had to pick a team from the division to win it, I wouldn't really be able to pick one, I don't think. Because obviously Seattle continues to be consistent. I think consistent is a good word to put on Seattle just as a team in general. Obviously, Russell Wilson is a terrific, terrific talent. One of the better quarterbacks in football year after year. Doesn't really turn the ball over very much. Can use his legs to get wherever he wants to and develop plays much longer than a lot of other quarterbacks can. And I don't. I think we could even say that Russell Wilson is a considered. I'd say like a top 5 MVP candidate coming into the year. And that's saying a lot considering there's a lot of good quarterbacks, a lot of good running backs, a lot of just talent in the league in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It seems like literally every single year we watch Seahawks games and when they got like a Sunday night football game late in the year, and it's like, wow, Russell Wilson's having the best year of his career, and that happens literally every year. He just keeps getting better. So really hard to count that out. You mentioned consistency as well. Obviously, you're talking about Pete Carroll. He's been there a while. He's done a really nice job coaching. And then the team we haven't even talked about, the LA Rams, I feel like they could be pretty solid as well. I think Sean McVay is still one of the top coaches in the league. I think they're going to have a little bit of a different rushing attack moving away from when they had Todd Gurley, but they drafted Cam Akers, who was my favorite running back in the class overall in this upcoming draft. So I think the Rams are still pretty solid as well. You still have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, two of the better receivers in this division. So, yeah, as we said, this is probably the best division in football, at least going into the season. So, really, really tough to pick there. But if I had to put a pick on it, I'm going with the Niners getting the division win and Arizona getting the playoffs as well.
Just one more question about the Rams. Do you think Jared Goff is legit? Do you think he's like a long-term option? Because I think a lot of people have gotten to the point where they are sick and tired of seeing Jared Goff play quarterback for the Rams, um, especially last year where he was just abysmal.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think I would say Jared Goff will continue to be the guy for the Rams because he has a good relationship with Sean McVay. I think he does a good enough job running that offense that he is worth keeping. But yeah, I think it's definitely a fair point. I mean, he has had so much talent around him. He came up really short in the Super Bowl, did not really play too great in that game. So that's obviously going to be a big hit, especially as you continue to struggle at least a little bit. But I think Jared Goff is going to continue to be the guy with the Rams, at least for a little bit, at least for a few more years, that is.
Yeah, I mean he's obviously under contract, so you can't really do anything about that. But um, I don't know. I saw somebody say the other day if the Rams had like a top 10 quarterback in football, that they would be a consistent Super Bowl contender for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And I don't know. That might be a little bit of a stretch. But obviously the weapons are there. And again, we've talked about interesting division. This is another reason why this division is interesting because you have a team like the Rams that is just a couple of years off of being one of the best teams in football year after year and being an absolute just wagon of a team.
Yeah, still have the best player in football, Aaron Donald. Can't forget that as well.
Also true.
So that
Yeah.
was a good breakdown there of each division. We're gonna go through our MVP picks and our Super Bowl picks right here, and then we'll get into NBA and NHL. But here we go. Final part of our NFL preview podcast. We'll go with our MVP picks. You probably know who I'm going with. I'm going with Kyler Murray. I love Kyler Murray. He's gonna pop off this year. I told you first, so there you go. Kyler Murray winning MVP this year.
I'm going to be boring. Patrick Mahomes, not really much of a question. I think there's too many weapons on his offense, and obviously adding a consistent running back who can do everything that the Chiefs love so much. I don't know. I don't think it's very tough for me to pick. But I really do appreciate the pick of Kyler Murray because you have stuck with him for a long time now, and this is really the year where he proves you right. I think this is really
Let's
it.
go. I've got the Donnie vote of confidence, so hopefully Kyler proves me right.
I have him. I picked him in my fantasy league, thinking, hey, if there's gonna be one quarterback that really does something this year, it's gonna be Kyler Murray. And you love to see guys like that who are not necessarily the mold of like the average, the normal quarterback, just absolutely shocking people. And I think Kyler Murray is that guy that's going to be one of the faces of the league for many years, especially because he's been handed one of the best receivers in the league on top of he gets to throw to Fitz and Christian Kirk. They have a good running game. I don't know. There's a lot to like about the Cardinals, which is the first time in a long time that you can say that like with a straight face. I think, which is
Yeah.
a definite positive.
Oh yeah, definitely agree. I think my honorable mention for MVP is a guy we just talked about, Russell Wilson, which is actually a good player comp for Kyler Murray. I think the fact that Wilson has been so good with Seattle at a height under 6 foot, it seemed like for a while that NFL teams were always discriminating against the short quarterbacks. That kind of paved the way a little bit for Kyler Murray to have the ability to go first overall. So like that as well. So solid MVP picks there. Now our Super Bowl picks. Who are picking to win it all? I have the Green Bay Packers over the Baltimore Ravens. So that's where I'm going for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I've decided to stick with the Chiefs theme. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs over the Saints. I believe that the Saints are gonna have a good year. I believe Drew Brees is gonna continue to be just maybe I'd say efficient. Is like it's a bad word to use, but he is a guy that is consistently efficient year after year after year. You don't really have to worry about him if he stays healthy. And then it's Mahomes. What do you need out of Mahomes? This is a guy that you literally can't question at this point. Just the most insanely talented quarterback I think I've ever seen in my life, and people realize he's still very very young, so he could continue to get better. And imagine Mahomes getting even better than he already is. Like think about that.
Yeah, scary thought. Last question I have for you, Donnie, before we move on. If the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, if your prediction holds, does Andy Reid retire at the end of the year?
No, you can't retire on a Super Bowl win. I think he would give it. He'd keep going. I think you can say Andy Reid is still as good as anybody in the league in terms of coaching. He just manages to make things work over and over and over with everybody he's with. Obviously, he didn't win until this last year, but if they won again, can he really give it up on like the potential of a dynasty? I don't think he can.
That's fair. I mean, some people have the mindset of quit while you're ahead, and 2 Super Bowls would be pretty sweet. But hey, at the same time, I mean, if you went back to back,
Okay, but what if
you
he
have a
put
shot
up
to go
3
three
or
in a row.
4 in a row?
Yeah, I mean, hey,
Like, come
that
on,
would be
what
insane.
if he put up 3 or 4 in a row? You can't sit there and act like Andy Reid isn't like maybe the best coach that
Hey,
we've
that's
ever
what that's
seen.
what I've been
Though.
saying. That's what I've been saying. Andy Reid.
Oh,
I have
I
Belichick.
know.
I have Belichick as the top coach of all time. Andy Reid's number 2. So and I was saying that before the last Super Bowl.
I've been hearing this for a long
Yep.
time. Yeah, so it's like there's
I'll
nothing
always
surprising
be
in that.
defending Andy Reid. So
And
yeah.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So there you go. Big football breakdown. We're super excited for football to come back. So there we go. Nice overview there of the season for us. Let us know why we made you mad because we said your favorite team sucks. So if you're a Jets fan, that's probably, or a Jaguars fan, go move to London. There you go. There's our last thoughts on the Jags. So good stuff there. We can now move on to a few thoughts from the NBA real quick. Actually, we at our last podcast, we talked a lot about the Milwaukee Bucks for reasons off the court, which was an important conversation. If you want to go back and listen to that with our friend Owen, that was a good one. But we can talk about now back on the court in the NBA playoffs. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're struggling, Donnie, with the Miami Heat. What's going on?
Oh, the series is over, and it's a very very sad reality that just because you are the favorite, just because you have a great regular season, does not mean that you're going to be a great playoff team. And the Bucks got out just dominated by the Heat and Jimmy Butler, who is I'd say one of the more fun players to root for in the league. Just a passionate player. You love seeing passion come out on the court. You love seeing passion come out on the sideline, and he's a really really good example and a good role model for players that are young. This is a guy that has been counted out his entire life, basically. Was not a very high recruit for the majority of his youth. And now he has made it to a point where he is going to the conference finals against either the Celtics or the Raptors. That will be figured out Wednesday, September the 9th. And it's surprising to me to see the Bucks out so early, but we see this time and time again in the NBA where teams that are just not, I mean, maybe slept on a little bit. Like I think you especially could tell me that Jimmy Butler is a dog. Jimmy Butler is ridiculous. But we've seen Jimmy Butler make so many other players on his team look good and just look better than what we expected. It's like today, Miami beat Milwaukee, obviously without Giannis. But he has made guys like Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk was a plus 22 in 17 minutes tonight. It's like he makes his team better by playing a ridiculous amount of minutes, passes well, rebounds well, scores well. Jimmy Butler may be the most underrated player in basketball right now. And I think that is a fair assessment. And a lot of people are sleeping on Miami still, even though they've just absolutely massacred the Bucks in 5 games.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there on Jimmy Butler. Obviously, Jimmy Butler, he was a Chicago Bull for a while, so got to watch him a lot then. And I remember there was a playoff series the last time the Bulls made the playoffs. They were like the 7th seed, and they were playing the Celtics, completely outmatched. But Jimmy Butler was always the best player on the court at the end of those games. That it felt like the Bulls always had a shot because Jimmy Butler was out there. I know you mentioned so many of the benefits he has, but he also plays such great defense. He really can lock down just about anyone else who is a guard or a smaller forward. So yeah, Jimmy Butler's been incredible, hitting clutch shots late as well. So that's been fun to watch over there. And then I'm just gonna give another shout out. You were shouting out Jimmy Butler. How about Jamal Murray? Jamal Murray's been balling out for the Denver Nuggets lately. He's looked really good over the last couple of games as well. That's been a fun series with the LA Clippers over there in the West.
Yeah, I'd really like to see Denver take it to 7 just because, it's so much fun watching these players that don't get national TV recognition or they don't get just the type of just recognition in general that they deserve. It's like people are just now saying that Jamal Murray is like an elite player, whereas I think anybody that watches the NBA like closely would tell you Jamal Murray could end up being one of the best players in the league next year, like very, very easily. Um, obviously all you hear about in the West are the Lakers, just being dominant. The Rockets have James Harden, who's just an incredible player. But Jamal Murray could put himself in the conversation with some of the best players in the league very, very easily there. And I wouldn't even be shocked. And I mean, we've seen it time and time again in these playoffs. He is just a guy that is going to go out there and leave everything out on the court. And,
Yeah, Jamal
there's
Murray is
a lot of guys don't do that. So, I mean, it's like, you were talking about defense. Jamal Murray plays defense. He scores well. He does it all.
Yeah, Jamal Murray's been really fun to watch so far for the Nuggets. So yeah, and NBA playoffs they've been pretty fun to watch so far. I'm still going with the Lakers though. I still think the Lakers are gonna win it all. I know they lost their first game, but I mean, hey, wake LeBron up for games 4 and 5 of the series. That's what I would say. The Lakers will be fine.
Yeah, they've bounced back. They're up 2-1 now. A pretty substantial victory tonight. They took away a lot of Houston's offense in the fourth quarter, which is huge. Ended up winning by 10 after being tied at around 82. They ended up winning 112-102 tonight. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's hard to bet against LeBron, especially in the playoffs, especially when, he's got Anthony Davis, who is just ridiculous. All defensive first team named today. Should have been defensive player of the year, in my opinion, but I mean, I understand why he wasn't. But yeah, the NBA is as interesting as anything right now in terms of sports. We're seeing a lot of players and a lot of teams that are just randomly coming out of nowhere and just dominating.
Yeah, I agree with that. NBA has been fun to watch. So good analysis there. We will continue to follow the NBA, obviously, as playoffs go along. But that we can shift over to hockey now. NHL has reached the conference finals. We've got Vegas and Dallas. At time of recording, they are tied 1-1, and Tampa Bay and New York Islanders over in the East. Tampa Bay up 1-0. So good there for Donnie. Obviously, he's got the Tampa Bay Lightning as a cup pick. I was not as fortunate. The Avs choked their Game 7 against Dallas, so that's too bad. Now my cup pick is out. So those of you who are making fun of me for my Avs picks, now it is justified. Now it is allowed. So go ahead there. But yeah, NHL series have been pretty good so far. So yeah, Donnie, I'll shift it over to you to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah, the first couple of rounds were great, and then we see Tampa go out there. I don't think I've ever seen a playoff game where a team is so defensively is just talented, and you expect them to be great, and then they give up 8 goals. Basically just got dominated. Talking about the Islanders there against Tampa, who is my cup pick. I think that is a series that probably goes deeper than people think it is, especially after an 8-2 game 1. I think the Islanders are better than an 8-2 loss. I think everybody's better than an 8-2 loss. It's like you lose 8-2 in the playoffs. That's got to be such a depressing feat after going out and maybe proving people wrong. I think a lot of people would have picked the Flyers to beat the Islanders fairly easily in the last round, and the Islanders gave them a great fight. We're up 3-1 at one point and ended up winning Game 7 pretty dominant there. It's just surprising to me more than anything to see a team go out, a team that is a very defensively structured team, and give up 8 goals, look dominated, basically start to finish. The second period was a little better for the Islanders, but Tampa was just incredible Game 1, especially without Steven Stamkos, which is still not really holding them back, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, it is definitely surprising that Tampa is just still kind of chugging along without Stamkos. I actually have a follow up to you on that, Donnie. So obviously the Islanders, they got smacked in Game 1. They lost by 6. Do you think it is better to lose a Game 1 big, like get destroyed like that and just kind of flush it, move on. Hey, it was just one game, or lose a game, say in like double overtime where it's demoralizing, but hey, you were still in it, or is it that it really doesn't make any difference at all?
You definitely don't want to lose a game in triple or quad overtime or double overtime because that's got to be so demoralizing, especially because you played all those minutes and you're so tired, and then you end up losing down in the series. Um, I don't know. I don't think it really matters. I think Barry Trotz is a great coach. We've discussed this many times before. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on the Islanders. I wouldn't be shocked if they came out and won game two. Um, I don't know. I've never really thought about that necessarily. It's like a loss is a loss. I think, especially in the playoffs, points don't matter. It's like you can lose in overtime in the regular season. You can give yourself a pat on the back. But once the playoffs hit, overtime losses don't matter. It doesn't matter how you lose if you lost. It doesn't matter how you won if you won. Um, I don't know. I would assume that they bounce back just fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just kind of thinking because I know there's been some times where I'm watching playoffs and a team loses a game where it's been super close, and then they bounce back. It's like, oh, that really kind of shot us. Whereas there maybe a team gets blown out and they're like, hey, it was only one game. We flush it, we move on. Now we're playing better. But yeah, I think actually, as I was thinking about that more, it really doesn't make a difference because whatever ends up happening the rest of the series, that's going to be the narrative. Like, oh, we got destroyed and then we came back and won. Oh, we just flushed it and moved on. Like whatever ends up happening, that's going to determine the narrative. So I agree with you that I don't think it actually has too big of an impact.
Especially just coaching in general. It's like if they had a mediocre coach, like an Elaine Vigneault-esque coach, it might matter more than a Barry Trotz-esque. Um, I would just assume that Barry Trotz goes out there and tells them, yeah, this is, I don't fucking care that we lost 8-2. If we lost 3-2, 8-2, 11-2, it doesn't really matter in the long run. I believe the Islanders are going to go back to whatever they were doing before in terms of trap defensively, play a stronger defensive game, not give up eight, because that was the most surprising thing of anything to see the Islanders not only get dominated but just consistently let up high danger chances, high quality chances, and 8 goals in any hockey game from two teams is a high scoring game. Let alone 8 from one team that dominated basically start to finish the entirety of the way.
Yeah, hopefully you bet the over in that one. Tampa really lit it up. So with that, we can move on to some of our questions. This first one relates to the conversation we were just having, so that fits in perfectly here. This one comes from CP1 at Corey Perry 1 on Twitter. He says, "Why is Tampa so good?" Donnie picked Tampa to win the cup, so I'm going to let him go first on this one.
Depth. They are the deepest team in hockey by a considerable amount, and we've said time and time again, everybody in hockey knows how good their prospect pool has been and how good they develop these young players, and you see it time and time again. I mean, it's like first off, 8-2, um, it's a dominant game regardless. But when you look into who's scoring, you're getting production out of. So they had goals from Braden Point, Andre Palat, Ryan McDonough, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, 2 from Yanni Gord. Production from guys like Blake Coleman, who got an assist, Patrick Maroon, who got an assist, Shen got an assist, Sergachev got an assist, Chad Kirk had 3. This is a full team. It's a full team effort. It's not just one line doing the big, producing the big numbers like we've seen with teams like Boston, who is very reliant on their top line. Tampa has players top to bottom that play consistently, play well consistently, and they can basically hit you from any angle. When you have defensemen like Victor Hedman, who is it's just incredible to see what he can do. It's like you can't really sit there and question anything about this Lightning team with how well they've been built. And it's a primarily young team. It's like I think people are still surprised to see Braden Point be so good. I mean, it's like 5 points in a playoff game, like it's nothing with him.
Yeah, I agree with that. Depth is definitely a big one. I know that was something that we talked about even before the playoffs as we were kind of previewing that we thought that would be a help for Tampa to have so much depth, especially on the defensive side of things. One thing I want to note about Tampa that we did not bring up, I think Andrei Vasilevsky is still one of the best goalies in the NHL, and just because he has such a good defense in front of him, I don't think that takes anything away. I think Vasilevsky on his own is probably the best goalie remaining of the 4 teams. I know Vegas has a nice tandem with Lehner and Fleury, but I would take Vasilevsky over any goalie remaining, and I think that has proven so far this playoffs to be a big influence, and I think it's going to be something that helps Tampa continue to go strong.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you have a guy like that, it makes life easy for you. Life is easy for them. They just have to go out there and score, knowing that they're going to give up 2, maybe 3 goals a game at the max. It's like obviously they'll have a couple stinkers here and there, but it's like when you have a Vezina goaltender like that, what are you really looking for? There's not much that you can say negatively about Tampa, and goaltending is probably the strongest of anything on the team, which is shocking. But I mean, you've said it time and time again that Vasilevsky is your favorite goaltender, the best goaltender in the NHL for you, and I think that's a very fair assessment at this point. It just goes to show again how well Tampa has developed everybody on their team.
Yeah, really, really nice job there from Tampa. So, a bunch of reasons why Tampa's good there, but there we outlined a few of them. So, thank you for that question, Corey. Move on to a question here from Scotty G. Yes, there's a couple. We're going to go with this one. He says, best Sooner alumni in the NFL this season. Well, I mean, my MVP pick is an Oklahoma Sooner, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's my guy. So, yeah, I'm going with Kyler Murray having the best year of any Oklahoma Sooner, in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. I don't think it's any question at this point. I think some people who are homers would talk about other quarterbacks, but I think at this point there's no real comparison. Kyler Murray could be a top 5 quarterback very easily this year, especially with all those options, all the weapons that he has. He can do so much. I will definitely agree with you on that one.
Yeah, gonna go with Kyler Murray over washed Adrian Peterson in Detroit. So that was my deciding factor there. But yeah, there's definitely a good amount of Sooners there. I'll shout out Lane Johnson, the Eagle, as well. But yeah, definitely gonna go with Kyler Murray on that one. So thank you for that one, Scott. We will move on now. Out of sports, we got a few non-sports questions this week. So we love those. Love how we finish our podcast. You end of the podcast, folks, know the rules and the routine. So here we go. This one comes from my friend Hunter. He says, why aren't more people physically active? What causes a majority of the population to eat like shit and be sedentary? And what repercussions will this have on future generations? So this is actually a really interesting conversation. Hunter and I actually work out a lot together. Actually, that's like a big thing of ours. So that's kind of a little bit more context as to this question. And it is actually a really interesting conversation. I'll start with his first one when he says, why aren't more people physically active? And I feel like that's a really interesting thought. I feel like a lot of people would put it the fact that they're lazy or they just don't want to be physically active because they would rather be doing something else. And I always thought that was really interesting because I feel like for me, a big reason why I am physically active and do really enjoy going to the gym and getting in cardio is for my mental health, to be honest with you. I really think that I get a lot of benefits, not only for my physical health, but mentally I feel sharper and a lot more accomplished when I'm physically active. So I feel like a lot of people could be missing out on that when they choose not to be physically active. So that's just kind of some of my initial thoughts on that. But I will now send it to Donnie to hear some more of his thoughts on this.
Well, the first things first, people do not exercise because we have some issues in our country, especially with things like work life or school life balance. It's not something that's talked about very often, but I think people overestimate the fact that you get a lot of stress from going to work or schoolwork and stuff like that, and then you want to unwind, and unwinding for people is binge eating or just going home and sleeping, taking a nap or whatever, which is it's a reasonable thought. However, from my time as a former overweight human being, I have established that working out not only helps you feel better, but it helps you day by day have more energy, have more. I don't know. I just feel like I'm more excited for things when I'm done with my workout because you feel accomplished. And a lot of people in life don't have that feeling of accomplishment. Whereas when I go run 4 or 5 miles a day and then I get done with that, I feel like I've really accomplished something for the day. Even if everything else in the day goes to shit, I can say, hey, I went out there, I busted my ass, I broke a sweat. It's like that's what you're looking for. And I think a lot of people are. The laziness is the main root of all of our evils here. So
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one thing, just as we kind of shift to how we can take this conversation another way, that helped me is honestly having other friends that are interested in working out as well. I love talking with Donnie about different things we do to be physically active. The question asker here, Hunter, I mentioned that's someone that I work out with a lot. So having other friends that are also interested in being physically active, that helps a lot to talk with them about good practices, how to get better, things of that nature. So really enjoy that there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like one recommendation or thing I'll bring out here, at least for me personally, I wasn't always the most physically active. I would say like my first few years in college, I really wasn't even that interested. And then I would say probably about like a year or 2 years ago, I really started taking that more seriously. And it really just came down to me asking myself, what are my values? What did I want to get better at? And I felt like investing in my health was something that I felt was a good idea. Your health's not going away, so you might as well try and improve it and get better. So yeah, I feel like that just shares a little bit more personal experience about myself. I over quarantine, I started picking up other hobbies as well. While working out, I started boxing at my gym. So really, it's been awesome. I can't recommend physical activity enough, honestly. And stressing the fact that I get more benefits mentally, like Donnie said, you feel accomplished, but I just feel so much sharper and better when I work out. So just some words and interesting conversation there. But yeah, Donnie, any final thoughts on this?
Before we transition into why people eat like shit and such, I think it's really important, first off, that people, they say I don't have time or I don't want to do this. It takes like a week to build a routine, and then it's easy. It's really easy. So it's like I at the start I kept telling myself, no, I can't do this. No, I'm not interested. No, I don't have the time for this. When in reality, you can make time for just about anything, especially with they tell you if you work out like half hour a day, you'll be fine. You'll see some consistent growth in almost every aspect of your body's health. And even if it's just a light jog or a light walk somewhere, you have to start somewhere and you can pick up as you go. I know the internet is so great for finding different exercises for different skill levels. So if you're a beginner, if you find yourself totally out of shape, it's very easy to get into that grind, and then little by little every day you can improve yourself. It's not really not a difficult it's not a difficult thing once you get into it. It just takes about a week to build a routine, and then you'll be on it every day and just want to keep doing more.
Yeah, definitely a good recommendation there from you, Donnie. And then also, what I can add on to that is you don't necessarily have to make it overly complicated for yourself. Like Donnie said, if it's just going for a walk or stretching out in the morning, doing core exercises, it can be something so little, but so many people never even crosses their mind to be physically active and do something beneficial to their health. So yeah, interesting thought there. Another part of Hunter's question was you talking about how what causes a majority of people to eat like shit and be sedentary. I think that kind of goes along to the physical active part. People are just lazy. They're like, oh, I like eating food that is easy to come by, even if it's not necessarily the most healthy. So I think it's kind of a convenience thing. And then when it comes to being sedentary, it's the same deal. It's just people kind of develop their habits. And if it doesn't include physical activity, then it just never even crosses their mind to consider it really.
Yeah, and I think there's another aspect to that. It's like eating fast food is a lot cheaper than actually making your own meals from an outsider's perspective. It makes you think that way. But, I would say over time I've probably saved a considerable amount of money on food by not eating fast food. Like I used to very much enjoy like going to Wendy's and getting a chicken sandwich, something like that. But in reality, um first off, not great for you. We knew that. And second off, it is a little bit expensive to go consistently buy food that is shitty for you, that doesn't really provide much of a health benefit. Um, you will save more money over time. Like people that meal prep, for example, they show you how to do basically everything. If you wanted to learn how to meal prep for cheap, you could spend 20-25 bucks a week on chicken and vegetables. I mean, it might get a little bit boring, but if you want to eat healthy, you could literally eat chicken and veggies every day and save yourself a ton of money and also feel a lot better because you're eating a lot cleaner. Then obviously, I don't think anybody really knows where the Wendy's is coming from or where these fast food places get their food. Obviously, it's very low quality garbage too, to save them money. There's a lot of concerns that you can basically just figure out on your own if you just do a quick Google search. Like it's really not that hard.
Yeah, really interesting to hear you say meal prep there. Donnie, the question asker here, Hunter, big meal prep guy, always has his Tupperware, so he always sends me pictures of that. So that's funny to hear you bring that up as well. Last part of Hunter's question before we move on, he says, what repercussions will this have on future generations? I'm not someone that has the ability to predict the future accurately, so I don't know what this will have on future generations. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation. I love that you brought up this fact. So even if whoever it is that's listening is like, oh wow, maybe this week I'll do something beneficial to my health and be a little bit more physically active or help improve your diet, whatever the situation is. Hopefully, this conversation helped you. So Yeah, interesting thoughts there. But yeah, Donnie, any thoughts on how this will impact future generations?
Well, if you're a statistics guy like me, you can tell that the obesity rate in America has went up a considerable amount over the last couple of decades, and it will continue to grow probably. It'll plateau at some point because there are people that care about themselves, and then there are people that go out of their way to consistently stay healthy and provide that to other people. But the statistic right now is 39.6% of American adults are obese. And then we have 99 million people in America that are overweight considered. Being overweight, not the worst thing in the world because you can work out of it very easily. But when you get to the obesity or extreme obesity percentage, you get to that point. Um, it is very hard to get out of those those sectors of our obesity rates and such without putting in a ridiculous amount of work. And as you get older, it gets so hard to lose weight in general. It's like, I've been working with my dad to just because he's not obese. I'd say he's slightly overweight. And we could get him out of it very easily if he works at it. And I've been putting him on a little bit of a grind here. We're eating better. I'm making sure that he works out 3, 4, 5 times a week. And there's just the little boosts that we could save lives and make people just healthier in general. It's just going to continue to get worse. We've seen time and time again that our obesity percentage is just ridiculous in the country. And I mean, it probably comes with the whole, it's like you turn on the TV for an hour and you see how many food commercials. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, really, really awesome to hear that you're going out there and helping your dad with that, Donnie. So, yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned at the start, it's really great to have friends to do this with, whether it's physically active, help with your diet. Hunter, the question asker here, has helped me so much. So, really, really appreciate that question. That was a fun conversation to have there with Donnie and an important one at that. So, we appreciate that, Hunter. So now we can transition from good advice, positive conversation to a question asking the opposite. This one comes from Katie. She says, "What is the worst advice you've ever given someone?" And immediately when I read this question, I thought, I guess it's recommending that the Colorado Avalanche are winning the Stanley Cup because now they're eliminated. But yeah, I mean, worst advice you've ever given someone. That was the first thing that crossed my mind. Donnie, I want to hear from you what you think about that.
There's a couple. I think there are times where people say you got it or you can do this when you really can't do it. Um, there are some things that are just simply out of our control in this world. So it's like if somebody wants to become president, hey, I wish you the best on that one. You can do it, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, I think the worst advice you can give somebody is just not caring and then just telling them, yeah, you got this, or hey, you can do it, and not being honest and be like, yeah, probably not a great idea. Um, yeah, if I had to pick something else, I would say, you know, I don't know necessarily. I don't really give people advice like that. I'm more of the you know, positive, just try not to scare people type person. I try not to tell people things because it's like I'm not perfect. I don't know anything, but the whole "you got it" to people is probably the best thing that I could say. Because you are convincing people that they can do things that they probably can't do. If it's something on a scale like, oh, I want to go to the moon, or oh, I want to be president. It's like the chances are of you becoming president are very, very low. I'm sorry to tell you. I'm sure Scotty G is gonna listen to the end and think, oh, maybe I could become president. Scotty G, if you're thinking about being president, don't do it. I'm gonna be honest with you, probably just not a great idea.
Yeah, that is actually an interesting thing that you bring up because I feel like a lot of times you have to like reach a certain level of like friendship with someone before you can be like so blatantly honest, like, nah, dude, you probably can't be president, or like, or if they're like trying to accomplish some task that there's no way they're gonna do it. You'll be like, no, but that only comes after a certain time. Like if you just meet someone and they're like, oh, do you think I can accomplish this? You're like, yeah, I think you can do it, even though you have no idea on their abilities. So kind of an interesting thing there.
Yeah, I think a lot of us say these things. Maybe empty, advice. Um, and I think that's human nature. You'd like to see people be positive. I like to see people think that they can do whatever they'd like to. But there are some things that are simply unattainable, especially for the majority of human beings. And I think that's something that we need to establish in this world. I'm going to continue to tell you you can do it. Just know if I tell you you can do it, there's a chance that you probably can't do it. And
We
I'm
have a
sorry.
disclaimer out there now. If you ever hear from Donnie.
Yeah, I didn't invent rainbows, and
True.
I did not give you good advice. I'm sorry.
There you go. Good question there from Katie. Love to hear what your worst advice you've ever given was or ever received. That was an interesting thought there, so we appreciate that. But yeah, that concludes today's podcast. That was a good episode. A lot of football talk. Talked about some
A long
basketball, some
one.
hockey. Yeah, it was a good podcast. Hopefully, you are enjoying football now. I assume you're listening to this while either the Chiefs game's going on or there's football going on later. So enjoy it, man. We've waited a long time for football. I know I am definitely excited. So really looking forward to that. But with that, I'll send it to Donnie to wrap things up. And again, give our pitch to have Sheck West come on our podcast.
Yeah, I was about to say, I hope Sheck West is enjoying whatever he's doing right now, and I hope he enjoys the football season. I think everybody's excited for it. But yeah, if you have listened all the way, I know Scott has. He always does. He's a nut.
Our loyal
But
listeners, let us know. Let us know you made it
yeah,
all the way through.
tell me if you've made it
Let
all
us
the way
know.
through because Spotify
We know
statistics
you're
are
out there.
the statistics are not great. I really cannot figure out. I feel like they are maybe a little bit not so efficient at this point because there are some crazy things like
Spotify's giving the bad advice. That's
yeah,
what's going on.
there was a podcast at some point. For anybody that's listening, quick story here. There's a podcast at some point, like I'd say 6 or 7 episodes ago, that said we had like 72% of our listeners came from Europe.
Nice.
It's not possible. That's something that's just not happening.
We're big in Sweden, I guess.
Apparently the Finns really enjoy listening to the Roadie on the Horn podcast. But yeah, other than that, we really appreciate everybody that listens. We appreciate the questions. The questions are always great, as per usual. Not as many this week, which is good, but we also talked for an hour and 20 minutes, so not that big of a deal. But again, I hope you all listened all the way through and you enjoyed it. If not, let us know what we can do better. If you have any questions for us to answer, feel free. And we will talk to you again soon.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.